Yeah, I'm gonna buy that one and that one. All of it. I need it all. Do you want it though? Where do I begin? I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't.
Hey guys, welcome back to another session of Educators Roundtable. Well, we said we're going to continue the series because this is a lengthy conversation. Basically, it's over 40 years of conversation. Of course, we can't do it in an hour. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to continue the conversation around education equity, whether there has been a loss in education or not. So as educators, we often ask ourselves, what new policy is going to go in place? What new requirements going to go in place? Whether it be for staff or maybe for students or may it be for districts. We want to find out, how is it impacting us in the classroom? How is it impacting us as administrators? And how is it impacting students? For the past 40 years, they've often said and raised the question of, why is urban education behind? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, 1 year in relation to suburban and rural education. So we're going to continue to have this conversation until we can get to the root cause. And hopefully this will take us to a larger platform and we will come up with a resolution on how to make things change in our schools and urban education. Why? Because our future depends on it. So as always, of course, I've got my co-host. What's going on, Shannon?
Not a whole lot. That intro music was fire, man. Can I get a little bit of context? Who was that? Like what? Like I was like, yeah. Can you?
I'm gonna tell you. So I laugh because everybody always says, Christine, your commercials and stuff are so cool in your music. I actually have to buy all of those tracks, and I get like 2 or 3 minutes of a track that I can use. So thank you, Shannon, for that. But yeah, I kind of look at what it is that we're talking about, and this is an edgy conversation, so it needed a little rock to it, a little hip. You know what I mean?
It's gonna get edgier. It's gonna get edgier.
It's gonna get edgier tonight for sure. Okay, so Shannon, you are in New York, and of course, you guys are like, everybody watches what you do to see, how to respond or how to act on things when it comes to classroom and education in general. And I know you've got a lot to say about equity in education and whether or not it's happening or what can we do more of in order to ensure that we're on par, what we need to do to secure our future. But before we take it any further, you guys often hear me talk about the different school districts that I work with. And I'm going to say to you, you guys have heard me talk about, I don't know, Detroit Service Learning Academy all the time. I think like a couple weeks ago, we had another staff person on with us. And this week, I'm going to tell you, you talk about rock star school leaders. This guy is a game changer. And if you are ever in the market as an educator to look for a place where you can expand and grow under someone, this is this guy. And I'm going to tell you, not because they're one of my clients, because if it wasn't a good school district, I would tell you, but yeah, they are one of my clients. But I'm going to tell you, this is a rock star school district. We talked about them, Shannon, so many times about how they do what they do and make the magic happen, how they went out of their way. We hit with COVID, they were knocking on doors.
Excellence is in their DNA.
It is. And that's their motto, right? Excellence
is in their DNA. It is. They're phenomenal.
So before we go any further, let's welcome D'Angelo Alexander. So what's going on over there?
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm outstanding. So we talk about charter schools, and you guys are one of the premier charter schools here in Michigan. You guys are rock stars. You guys are game changers over there in what you do. And we constantly talk about how you guys go far beyond what any school district does just to ensure your kids have food, technology, parents are employed, lights stay on, food stay on the table. You guys go far beyond any school district that we've even talked about. Like, it's just unreal what you do. So I just want to say it's not just the school in general, but it's you as a leader. You getting your own vehicle and knock on doors and make sure babies are okay. When they're missing from school, you're the guy, forget attendance, person, you're knocking on doors. I love that about you. So what's going on over there? Like, what do you want people to know about service learning?
Hey, you know what? Shannon and I worked together for a while. And actually, Shannon started a lot of the things that I continue to work on. So he knows better than anyone how hard we work, and how well of a team I work with. I do lead. I am the superintendent of Detroit Service Learning Academy, the Service Learning District. We have, we like to say we always have a door open. We have Detroit Service Learning Academy, Oak Park Service Learning Academy, and Redford Service Learning Academy. And we're working on this 9th grade academy that we hope to open in fall of 2022. Serving about almost 1,400 students. And I say that proudly because everyone didn't make their mark for students this year. Yeah. And everyone kept saying, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I think it sort of alludes to how you introduced me in saying that we care, we love, and we reach out, and we go way beyond the expectations of a quote unquote educator. We feel like we are in their lives, they are our family, and we want them to be successfully living a life, whether it be here at the school or at home. And so if they don't have a home to go to, we got to help work that out some kind of way so that our babies get the best that they can get. We have a 100% free and reduced lunch program. We're 100% free and reduced, all of them. It used to be what was it, 98% for a second, Shannon?
Yeah.
We reached that 100% mark, and working with economically disadvantaged individuals can be tough. But I was one of them. Shannon was one of them, and you probably were too, Miss Burkett. I can't see it, but you little, hey Shannon, she lived across the street,
Okay, you guys are hilarious. You guys know I grew up off of Schoolcraft. Stop playing. I was one of them. Okay?
Stop playing. Over there with YBI.
What up, though?
Don't play.
But I mean, one of the number one things that I expect for anyone that works in the organization that I lead is that you love children. If you love children, I can work with you with everything else, including academically challenging our babies. And so that's why we're here to have this discussion about equity, which, by the way, since Brown versus Board of Education, we've been fighting for. It's not just recently. This has been an ongoing struggle since Brown versus Board of Education.
Okay, so I guess, Shannon, we can just dive right in.
You know what? And I need to be 100% transparent. D'Angelo is my brother, former workout partner. I'm talking 5:30 in the morning at the gym. Like that's my guy. And he the reason he in New York. That's why I gained some weight. He the reason. I gotta blame it on somebody. I need to be transparent in that. So there's gonna be a high level of comfort in this. This is a safe space. There's a safe space. And so I just want us to be real clear with that. I'm glad you mentioned Brown versus Board of Education because I think, and I could be wrong with this, I think that Brown is one of the reasons why the Black teaching ranks were decimated, because there were very few options for those students other than to go to schools and to integrate. And there were perfectly great schools in their communities. Yeah. There were teachers that were meeting their needs. But historically, when you look at the teaching ranks in this country, Brown versus Board is directly related to the lack of Black and brown teachers in this country. And that's just an unintended side effect, but it happened.
Oh, definitely. I totally agree. On top of that, it reminds me, if in Detroit, they talk about the black bottom and how the black bottom was sort of like blown up by the freeways and the newness of everything coming in and the riots that happened in '67 and how new Detroit came. And now there was opportunity outside of the Black community. So people sort of, we talk about white flight, but there was some Black flight as well. And there still is Black flight, to go back to Shannon's point. And that is exactly why we are where we are. And it has a lot to do with the equity of learning that we have, that we don't have right now.
So the question I want to ask you guys, see, Brown versus Education, the Board of Education was supposed to offer us more opportunities. It was
They
supposed
did.
to open up more opportunities to give us access to resources that our kids didn't have, right? So when you think about that, at the time, it was because we didn't have the books, we didn't have the resources that they had. But now when we look at it, it's been almost what 50, 60, I want to say almost 60 something years later, you're looking at it, we're still in the same space.
We
So
are,
the
and
question is, when
it
you
took a
talk
long time for that, for districts to become equal or to practice desegregation. As a matter of fact, I believe Benton Harbor was the last district in the state of Michigan to actually be desegregated, and that was in the 90s.
yes, it was definitely in the 90s. And for those who are watching tonight, I just want to share this with you. If you want to join the conversation, click the link in the conversation, Chase, and just click on the link. You can join us live on StreamYard, or you can put all your questions or responses into comments. So moving forward, what we're here to talk about tonight is educational equity. When we talk about this, we really just want to talk about high level, whether or not we do feel that there's been a loss to education, right? So right now I have the top 4 things that have supposedly been put in place in order to shift, right? Shift and or analyze how we're learning, right? So the first thing is No Child Left Behind. The other thing is they incorporated was the Common Core standards. Then there was merit pay, but standardized testing is the way that we assess whether or not kids are are learning, and whether teachers are teaching. So when we look at the Common Core, we want to look at the fact that, one, to Shannon's point we talked earlier, this was put in place in 2001. 2001.
Under the Bush administration.
Yeah, under the Bush administration. And so, let me share real quick, and I try to make sure I share in real time when we do have people join the conversation. Eddie Flowers, thank you for joining us. He says, because I thought segregation gave us the illusion, equity, and equality. And I'm gonna agree with you. I think it did. It did. And when you think about everything that has transpired since then, so when we look at No Child Left Behind, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about the No Child Left Behind?
So,
well,
I didn't know that there was a Kanye West song called No Child Left Behind. I'm gonna have to do some digging into crates after that. Go ahead, brother. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh my God, you're
so, No Child Left Behind was probably, I'll be honest, besides 911, probably what President George Bush is really remembered for. And I don't know if it did us well or made us better. It put more emphasis on the assessments that we had to take, the norm assessments that we had to take statewide to compare, and then nationally. And so, and then, shortly thereafter, NWEA MAP tests were introduced. And I think almost 80% of the nation uses that test. And so what they did is they didn't, I don't think they helped improve academics. I think they normed how to assess academics across the nation.
So do you,
that didn't benefit the school districts nor the schools. That benefited them.
So
and
let
them
me ask you
being
a question. Do you think that was a way for them to still separate us?
Well, I don't think my initial thought, I don't like to go straight to the race card. I think that they meant well at first. But, we talk about the opportunities that were out there for other districts. Well, the minority population started to branch out even more into the suburban areas. And once the families branched out, now those suburban areas needed people of color to help them rein in, manage, and teach their students. And in essence, great districts like where we are were robbed of some of the best minority teachers, and they went out into the suburbs, and their tax dollars and their their millages and the way that they could support increasing the salaries of individuals was much greater. And so it was very sexy for people to leave and go get paid more money to work with what? To be the first Black or first minority, and then to lure more out to teach. So now, I'm sure Shannon's dealing with the same thing we're dealing with here in Detroit.
Yeah.
There's a teacher shortage, and primarily a teacher of color shortage, but it's a shortage period, no matter how way you
period. So yeah. Shannon, do you agree with Alexander when he says that it took our best quality teachers because they could make more money in the suburban rural school districts and took them from urban school districts, which then diminished the level of teaching or quality teaching that our students were getting?
So I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to answer a question that you didn't ask. Mm-hmm. And No Child Left Behind. Okay, and let's just be plain. The responsibility of educating the citizenry is on the state. It is the state's responsibility to educate mm-hmm. and to fund with local and state funds in order to make that happen. No Child Left Behind, and I know you've all heard of it referred to as an unfunded mandate. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, on any given day, the budget of a school district is probably upwards of possibly 10 to 15% federal dollars. Mm-hmm. So the feds really don't have a whole lot of teeth in this. And I'm just going to be plain with you. I don't know that the feds ever have my best interests at heart or my kids. And I think that I've always got to be a bit cognizant of what the ultimate intent is. And I think the intent here was to further measure, delineate, back to your point, D'Angelo, to separate. This is where those building, school, and district report cards came into play. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, this was a little bit of a draconian system with schools that ultimately needed more support. And they had supports and autonomy stripped from them when they didn't do as well. So No Child Left Behind, I think when you say No Child Left Behind, you're ultimately not saying what you need to, because who's ultimately left behind is children of color, poor children, and all of the children that we know society has left behind. But let's think about the conditions that have been created that allow children to be left behind and flourish. And they don't start in schools. They start in communities. They start with the economy. They start with health. And so you got an entire population that has been subjugated and looked upon as inhuman. And before we get deep into this, I want to just say that the Oxford Community Schools, my prayers go out to them, to those families that lost those students, and to everyone in that area. But let me just say two things. There was a young man in an active shooter situation with a loaded weapon that was taken alive. I don't even have to ask what color he was. Mm-hmm. I don't have to ask. Let's go back to the Charleston church shooting. After that happened, the young man was taken to get something to eat by law enforcement. So the conditions that are allowed to exist that will dehumanize and treat folks in the way that they have, of course they filter into the economy, into job opportunities, and ultimately into school. So when we think about and talk about No Child Left Behind, I don't think that we can do so in isolation, but it's all a part of a system that has completely dehumanized Black and brown bodies.
Agreed. Trisha Jenkins just joined us. Thank you so much, Trisha. She said, yes, not only were students left behind, not only was students left behind, but parents, teachers, and communities. And then Trisha also said that, and our nation has been left behind because of these shifts in education. And I agree with you with that, Trisha. She also said no child brought forward. And so when we look at this, Trisha's an educator. And those are the things, and to your point, Shannon, 100%. I don't think we tracked the growth that I think supposedly this law was supposed to put in place, because right after we did that, we scooped up with a couple of other things, but then we threw in Common Core to then look at standardizing initiatives in education. And that was in 2010. We're now in 2021. And I'm still not understanding. We did No Child Left Behind. Now we're doing Common Core. But is there an alignment, and have we seen any growth? So are we attempting to create a standardized process in the way that we teach and our students learn, without understanding there's some underlying factors involved between urban, suburban, and rural, right? So we need to think about that. I mean, when you think about the Common Core standards, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
So Trish sort of was a perfect segue, because Common Core, when she mentioned that America is behind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Common Core was created by some excellent educators that studied how the countries that were at the top 10% were educating their students.
Mm-hmm.
After they did put that study in place, and they culminated all of their information. By the way, most of them work for the Gates Foundation right now. But before that, they were considered. They put together a program called America's Promise,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when they were created. Common Core came out of America's Promise. So I worked for Pearson, and Pearson bought America's Promise. That's how I know what I'm saying. And so I literally had to work when Common Core first came out. Had to work to understand, to be able to deliver it to others, for them to understand and to learn how to use it specifically. So
Alexander, let me ask you real quick. But Common Core is not common across every state.
That's what I was about to say. The states, like Shannon set it up. He said the states are responsible for educating their students, and every state had the opportunity to choose between Common Core, and it was another one. It slips my mind right now. It probably was top 3 that they had an opportunity to choose from as to their approach to reaching students who were left behind. Now, what comes to my mind is the difference between the countries that are at the top 10 versus the countries that are at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing with those countries that are at the top is discipline and respect. Discipline and respect. And as soon as you put that in play, in America, corporal punishment is not allowed.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
In America, the respect for educators, let alone education, is extremely low, particularly in the minority settings, your urban minority settings.
Oh, 100%.
It is not valued. It is not valued the way it was valued when we fought for equal rights.
I agree. And Shannon and I
that
talked
is
about
where
that.
that is where we are being left behind, because the value of education is not there. And therefore, and some of those people that don't value education are educating our kids. Let me just be honest. That's why you can't work for me unless you love children, because you have places where we have people educating our kids or de-educating our kids, and they don't even love kids. So therefore, the effort that they put forth, knowing what they need to know in preparation, is not there. They're babysitting.
Okay, so
let's be honest. They're babysitting. So the employees, the educators, are a part of the big reason why our students are not learning. A teacher is the number one person to educate and change a child's life.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. I heard what you said, but a lot of teachers would also say that they can't do it alone. Like, what role does the parent play in this whole thing, right? If you only if you only have my kid for 45 minutes, max 50 minutes, what impact are you going to make that's greater than a parent or their support resources? So I think in urban education, it's not just what takes place in the classroom. To your point, we have a lot of kids who are going home to no support. So if they didn't learn that content, if they didn't learn the algebra that they needed to in class, who do they have to go home to help support them with that? Okay, so wait, we got a lot of people tossing out comments. Give me 1 second. So Trisha says, Common Core is not common, or students are unique individuals who need individualized instruction and systems that teach the needs of the whole child. I'm partnering in parenting classes for parents who are overburdened, overworked, and overlooked. I agree with you 100%. We talked about that before, where kids don't have the support they need at home, which is huge. Trisha also said, she says, amen, respect is missing in our communities and not often taught in homes. So you got a lot of kids who are coming to the classroom just going off on teachers who were trying to be supportive of their education, give them the tools that they need. And you got Eddie, who says Common Core is a joke. As an engineer that teaches collegiately and 7 through 12 currently, this format doesn't have the American culture in play. I agree with structure and discipline. He says, real talk, because they're talking real talk. I have fallen out of love with students because of how they are sent to us. So Alexander, I mean, I know, I've seen you handle some stuff in real time that kind of blew my mind because it's just unreal. I mean, what do you think about the comments that these educators are sharing with us?
Well, Shannon can concur with this because he did it as well. Provided parenting classes, had a parent academy, but it doesn't work if they don't show up. And I mean, and the people that do show up are people that I've talked to one-on-one. I've asked to come. I've promised them something for them to come, but it should not be that hard to help someone do better.
And guys, I just want to make it clear, at the Service Learning School District has given out gas cards. They've given out food cards for parents to come participate just in parent-teacher conference. Literally, I know what this school district has done in the community to try to get parents to come through the door. So to your point, they've done all of that. And parents, they would have 1 or 2 parents show up. And it's big. So let me share
what I would say to that is that I see Trish making a point. We will continue to, even though attendance may be low, I believe that it's like a snowball effect. You got to keep stabbing at it, and as you keep rolling that snowball, it'll continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, we can't quit. We got to keep on pushing. But the reason why I want to answer, the question of where we are is because we have too little and not too many that really want to work to help their students at home.
Okay. And and I agree with that. So that kind of rises into what Trish is saying. She said, yes, case in point, a parent at our school has 3 boys terrorizing our school with their outright disrespect. The parent says, stop calling me. I'm a single parent and doing the best I can. All right. So Shannon, what do you say to a parent like that? What do you say to the teachers?
I'm going to answer that question. I totally am. But I want to go back to the Common Core. And I want to say that the effort was incomplete in that the Common Core separated the, so when you think about the instructional core, you have the teacher, the student, and the content. And kind of in the center, you have the task. Mm-hmm. The Common Core was the content. What about supporting, and again, whether you're for it or against it, it was an incomplete effort, which has served to, unfortunately, just further sidetrack and derail. And again, it's another federal mandate that was unfunded because education is the responsibility of the state. I say all that to say this. Most states just didn't do it. They just didn't do it. We're going to just do our own thing. But what do you say to the parent? we are living in a state of emergency with our communities, with the needs of our students and our families. And I have to think that we don't have parents that are filled with malice. I think they honestly just don't know any better. And they're frustrated. They don't have the tools or the skills to communicate in the way that they need to. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to really become community schools again and embrace the whole family, not just the child, because, but as Alexander said, you can offer supports. They're not even necessarily taken advantage of in all cases. But I think a part of it is really asking them what they need and providing some of the needs that they request. And I'm talking about schools going beyond how we currently define them. But the needs of families have to be met if we're going to begin to meet the needs of kids. And schools aren't equipped to do that. But I do know of a number of community organizations that we could partner with that might be able to bring some resources in. And I think, and COVID really, I think, brought a couple of organizations much more closely together than they would have been. So, it's a tough piece, especially when you have a parent who clearly doesn't have the tools to do what he or she needs to, saying, stop calling me. I'm a single parent. I'm just trying to work. That's a person living in a constant state of emergency and crisis who needs real help.
And so Trish commented behind that. Trisha said, if you don't come to parenting classes when you need intervention, your child is no longer enrolled, your benefits are cut, your driver's license is suspended, your legalized marijuana card is revoked. Trish, I love you.
Trish,
like, it's a wrap.
She's not playing.
But I actually had what they call a success coach at a school that I ran before. And the success coach came from the Department of Human Services. And I could use that success. If I had a student whose attendance or behavior was out of hand and they were receiving any kind of services from the Department of Human Services, and in this particular area where I was at on the East Side, all of them received something. I could go to that success coach and say, this is the issue. Like if it was attendance or if it was behavior, and we don't have any kind of quality response from the home, that success coach could do almost what Trish just said. She could threaten to mess with their fund, their services, if they didn't help, if they didn't respond, if they didn't do something to get involved. So Trish is on point with that response. It's just, how realistic can it be? Nowadays in Michigan, you can go to the courts if a student's attendance was not like it should be, versus going straight to CPS. It's a slippery slope. As I give reasons why we are behind. I want to also say that anyone working in education, I'm working in education because I believe we all can make a change. I believe that I can affect multiple people to help us make a change. So I believe that wholeheartedly. In this moment I stop believing that, I got to get out the game. So believing that and knowing that we're dealing with some struggles, it's a constant fight, and it's a constant sell to the parent that this is the best way for your child and you to get out of the economic disadvantaged situation that you're in. And the good thing is, I'm from the projects. I come from a one-parent family household. I have experienced a lot of things that our people are experiencing in the urban setting. So I can literally say, I am an example. I'm not rich. But I got gas in my car.
Exactly. I got gas in my car and I'm better where I was. Hey guys, we got to take a quick commercial break. Everybody hold exactly where you are and we'll be right back. Okay, guys, we're back. I want to say the conversation, again, as I stated before, is going to take a lot longer than 45 minutes. So if you missed the first half, we went through what are we looking at with No Child Left Behind? From our perspective, did it really help us not leave a kid behind, or have we left quite a few behind? But to Shannon's point, when you don't put money behind these policies, these laws, these initiatives, how impactful can they be in the schools? Are you expecting them to fund your initiative? The standard that you're going to hold them to. So now that we're going into the second phase of conversation, it goes to what Mr. Alexander brought up. He's a product, I'm a product of urban culture, of urban education. No, we're not rich, but we made it out. But we made it out because we knew the importance of education. We knew to respect our teachers. We knew to respect what it is that we wanted to accomplish in life, right? And we worked on it and we focused. So we decided, okay, we're going to get out of the ghetto, as they would call it. We're going to get out of urban culture and we're going to go educate ourselves. We're going to bring it back. But it goes back to one very important thing. Trisha said very simply, the parent has 3 kids and they're overwhelmed. And so we started that conversation, huh, Shannon, about this parent who's like overwhelmed. How many parents do we know have a gazillion kids in our school districts? I know right now for sure, and I'm not making this up, Service Learning has a parent that has 5 kids in their district. She literally has 5 kids in her district, cross grades. And I know this because I helped them work on their laptop initiative, right? So the one parent says, why do I have to come up so many times on these different days? Can I just get all my laptops at once? She wasn't playing. She was very serious about this. Because why? She had to catch the bus. So to her, that was a big to-do. So it goes back to that parent, like Trisha was saying, who's overwhelmed at this point. But she's trying to do her best and she understands the need, right? But there's got to be some consequences to parents not following through on what we need them to do to help support us. So when we go beyond where we are with Common Core standards, we put in this concept about merit pay. Now, I know all of you guys know what happened with merit pay across the United States. One of the cases actually hit national news where teachers went to jail for doing what? Changing test scores. Why? Because their pay for performance was attached to their students' test scores. Their attitude is, I'm teaching them. What's up? Are you kidding me? Now you're going to base my pay on whether or not little Christine has learned what she was supposed to learn in algebra. So guys, when we look at that and we bring into play everything we just talked about, what's your stance on that? How did merit pay come in behind Common Core, behind No Child Left Behind, and we still got the parent with the 3 kids who harassing the teachers? We know those 3 kids may not be doing well in class. We don't know, but they may not be doing well in school. So they may be one of those kids potentially who's holding the teacher back from getting what they rightfully have earned, right? So what's your thoughts behind that, guys?
So I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink's book, Drive. And it's really about kind of what motivates people to do what they do. Being a teacher is incredibly challenging, complex work. It's not building widgets. It's not putting parts in boxes. It's not screwing a bumper onto a frame. It really is work that involves a lot of decision making and thought and really higher level intellect on a number of different levels. I say all that to say this. Oversimplifying the work and saying, if you do this, I'll give you this, is almost an insult to educators. Because what people who got into education really want is training, resources, opportunities to grow, opportunities to really develop a much more deep skill set. And they would more than likely work for that and that alone.
Yep.
And I'm not saying work for free, but just throwing money at results is, again, another result of a policy that was enacted by non-educators. And unfortunately, it's been disastrous. And Atlanta is a perfect example of that.
And so I totally 100% agree with you. I just did a workshop. And the reason why the school district called me to do the workshop is because it was a conversation around teachers being drained over all of the Zoom with the kids and all these different things. So they asked me, could you come in and do something to inspire the teachers to want to continue to teach? We need them teaching at a certain level. And I think one of the things that I said to them before we even started the conversation, I said, do you think? I'm going to pose that question. Do you think? And a lot of it kind of got lost, right? When I started off with, do you think? And one person said, yeah, I think every day I come to this effing job and these effing kids are pissing me off. And I said, that's the point I'm trying to say to you guys. Do you think that what you're doing is being impactful? So it goes back to what both of you guys were saying. The whole presentation, the workshop that I did with them is about the impact that they can make on one person. We're just talking about one person. So when you talked about Alexander, your reach and what you feel you can accomplish is huge. So I explained to them, yeah, you're always going to have that one kid or that one coworker who's really going to piss you off and make you feel like this is a bunch of BS. You got some parents, like Trish was saying, that they don't understand what it is that you're doing and what you're trying to help their kids with. But what I'm going to say to you guys is this: do you think? And you have to finish that sentence. You have to finish that phrase, because if you don't think that what you're doing is going to change our future or shift a mind, you're mistaken. And the only thing I can tell you is I sat at a Pistons game, and I'll never forget, I'm sitting there with my kid, I'm watching the game, and this father walks down during halftime, and he's to the right of me, and he says, "Are you Miss Burkett?" And I was like, "Yes. How can I help you?" He said, "I just want to tell you thank you." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Turn around." His twin sons were in my biology class and in my chemistry class at Rutherford High School. He said, "Because of you, they're engineers. They said you were the best teacher they ever had. They talked about you every day and all the amazing things you did in the classroom that really intrigued them. And all I did was take my passion as a chemist, what made me excited, right? I grew up in a household, I was the first to go to college. Nobody in my house was doing chemistry. But my parents did one thing, which we just talked about. My parents embraced me. My dad took half of the garage and turned it into a lab and let me do experiments. He also let me pass out from mixing ammonia with bleach, but we won't talk about that, right? So Tricia says a lot of our parents in some of our communities need consequences. It helps to frame their reactions and future behavior. I'm going to tell you right now, you want to talk about consequences. That's Alexander, honey. He's hot at that with those parents. We can't get into it because some of the stuff Alexander does, I'm going to tell you, we got to keep it at the schoolhouse. But let me tell you, consequences when parents don't show up when their kids need them, he's knocked on some doors. He's done a lot, folks, to get parents in there. Eddie says the block kept the parent accountable. That's when the block was the block. You couldn't go down the street and do something without Miss So-and-so calling your mama like, Christine is on the corner. I thought you said she couldn't go past Kelly's house. A lot of that in our community has been broken because guess what? Now we can live anywhere. We got enough money. We can live in the suburbs, right? So now you're the only Black kid on the block. I don't know if those things still play. Tricia said, teaching cannot and should not be minimized producing a product. This is not a factory. We are enhancing lives of humans, and when you attach a price to a result, it discredits it. To your point, Shannon, it does. What works and what doesn't work. We need to be respected as contributors to an essential function of our society and not as engineers. I agree with you 100%. My passion for science, I'm going to tell you right now, Mr. Dunmore, my science teacher at Northwestern High School, he was the guy who told me I could do anything. So I built a life-size ostrich using Duracell batteries, and they gave me a full scholarship to go to college. He said, don't dream big, dream small. He said, don't dream small, dream big. So I went home and told my parents I was going to build a life-size ostrich. Do you know they kept my ostrich over at the museum for 2 years? Something I did, a kid. You know why? I was a product of Detroit Public Schools, and they were just amazed that some Black kid made a life-size ostrich that walked with Duracell batteries. That was back in the day. We won't talk about how old I am. Back up off of that, Shannon. I know you want to put it out. Don't.
I didn't say a word. I will say this. I will say this. Schools, communities, and neighborhoods were organized fundamentally differently. Going back to Eddie's comment about the block is now unfortunately populated with people who are much more transient, and relationships in schools, in communities are not as long lasting. And schools, as we know them, have largely been moved out of communities. Every community had a neighborhood school that you would walk to, and all the teachers that worked at that school were there forever. The nature of kind of that relationship to community and the people in that building has become much more transient. And as Mr. Alexander stated earlier, the teacher shortage has really destabilized a lot of those relationships, because you don't have the same person year to year, sometimes day to day in spaces with students. And that has a big effect as well.
It has a huge effect. So, Alexander, what do you think about the merit pay? Do you agree with Trisha that we can't treat this like it's a factory? We're just producing a product?
Shannon hit it on the nose. You can't just throw money at people. So, and he also, he almost said something that I say all the time, and that's people that are true educators, if you could pay their bills and take care of all of their little wants and needs,
they would be happy.
They don't even need a paycheck, because the reason they are in the game is to change lives, is to be impact. And they got educators wake up trying to give, trying to help, trying to do.
Figure it out.
Most of your educators leave their job, and if they have children at home, they go take care of them. If they don't, they go mentor somewhere. They go to a recreation center somewhere. And they're doing things in their church. Educators love to give, and so the merit pay really was not necessary, and I'm sure some people benefited from it, and that's great, because of course we are all underpaid in the business of education.
Agreed.
Business. The biggest problem that we had is when those business folk want to come in and run our education system like a business. Yes, it is a business. As a matter of fact, education is the largest business in the world, but it is not to be ran like a business. For example, most of your people that work in the business world question why we have so many breaks. They don't understand. They have no understanding of, we need time to mentally sharpen the saw, because if you're a real educator, you are giving of your heart. You are giving of your soul. You are giving of your spirit. And it needs to be refreshed, or you will be burnt out quickly.
But Mr. Alexander, you're giving your heart and soul to 30 plus students every day, like 100. I mean, so my thing is, if you get burnt out for one kid, I know when I was teaching, my son was 2 years old, 3 years old. And I'm telling you, I was teaching at a high school. And I was burnt out from teaching chemistry and biology in one class of algebra, that thank God I had my parents, because he was a 3-year-old and I just didn't have it in me, right? So 100% I tell parents, if you get sick of one kid, teachers are teaching like 200 plus kids every day, and 200 plus personalities, plus their coworkers. And then they've got an Alexander riding their butts about something. So they're pissed. And then they got somebody like Shannon that's telling Alexander to be on their butts. So they're pissed and Alexander's pissed. So, they need that break. Okay. So Eddie Flowers said merit pay came into play because a person that has never been in a classroom, being an educator, and transfer of information is fluid. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the thing. He said science rules. Okay. I knew he was going to say science rules. He's a robotics engineering guy.
But check it out. We talk about teaching and learning. And I like to say that if you're a real teacher, it's not really work, it's magic.
It is.
Because you're telling me I need to get this information
right out of this book into your head.
That is magic.
That's magic.
And when it happens, the paycheck don't even mean anything, because of the fulfillment that you receive as an educator when you watch that light bulb go off.
That's amazing.
The excitement that I get from that, and other educators get from that, is like priceless.
And
It's
I'm going to tell
priceless.
you, that's the one thing I miss from not being in a classroom. So now I'm working with teachers and educators and school administrators, and I like to see the light go off in their head. And sometimes it's a struggle, but I'm going to tell you, I love it when the kids get it. And I'm going to tell you this, as hard as I work at the time when I was at the Pistons game with my son, he was 9, he taps me on my shoulder and he said, "Good job, Mom. You did your job." And it was a moment like, that's all I'm going to get. But that was real talk. He was like, "You did your job." And I'm going to tell you, I would have stayed in education. I would have worked for free. Everybody asks me all the time, what is one job you would do for no pay? That's teach. To have an opportunity just to change the mindset, to get somebody on track with what they want to do in life is amazing. Michael, thanks for joining us. He said, powerful and very true, Mr. Alexander, is not work, it's magic. I'm telling you, it's like huge magic. And so she says, "Speak, Alexander, speak it," because it is. It's like people don't get it. It's like a magical moment when you can do that with the kid. So we all at this point we're all on the same page when it comes to merit pay. So here we go with standardized testing. Standardized testing is a test that is administered and scored in a consistent or standard manner. Standardized tests are designed in such a way that questions and conditions for administrator scoring procedures and interpretation are consistent, right? Okay, question. And I always pose this question. When we're looking at these standardized tests, I'm going to ask the factors that may impact teaching and learning outcomes. A standardized test can't gauge that. So one of the things that we want to bring into play is educational achievement levels. Instruction and institutional factors such as teacher to student ratios affect how students perform in school and on state standardized tests. Another factor that I don't know if they're really keen on or paying attention to. When we look at overall what a student needs to know in a classroom versus the cultural impact. So it's race, ethnicity, and culture can impact test scores for a very, well, not few reasons, a lot of reasons, such as their attitude, lower expectations of minority groups or test takers. I don't think that's an issue. I think this definition is an issue in a sense of you're not thinking about the cultural impact that we live in, that those kids live in. We all go home to regular lives. What do you do with the kid who goes home and the mama is getting beat up by the daddy every day? What do you do with that kid? What do you say to a kid who's living in the dark because they have no power? So those are the cultural things. And it's not about race. It's happening to white kids. It's happening to brown kids. So it's not about race. Another thing that they said that was a factor was socioeconomic status. Yeah, it could be. Attendance could be an issue, especially to this point when parents can't sometimes get their kids to school, right? Especially now with COVID, it's inconsistent. A parent is trying to keep up with the schedule. A lot of things are happening. And then we want to take into account the psychological factors. This is big for me because this is one thing we don't take into account, right? So how do you guys think schools are handling the psychological issues that kids may be struggling with? Parents who won't get their kids tested and parents who have gotten their kids tested who now do it what for Alexander? For the money. It's nothing wrong with their kids. They'll come up with ADHD in a second. I had ADHD growing up. My mother didn't get a dime. You know what she did? She gave me an instrument and I learned the instrument and I excelled in science because the instrument settled my mind and I stopped talking. You get what I'm saying? We figured a way around it. So what do you guys think about that? Those factors?
Yep. So until about 6 years ago, I definitely was one of those educators and one of those administrators that were like parents just trying to get paid, trying to get that Social Security check for it's for what's it for? It's because
disability.
Of disability. Thank you. So, but then I learned I would be at these meetings with mostly Europeans, and guess what? Europeans that were educators and administrators, and most of their kids would have an IEP. So it dawned on me like, oh, they work in the system. Why am I on my people working the system? So I let that go after that. I was like, oh, hey, if they qualify,
Mhm.
then we gonna serve them, and I left it at that. But that was another, in my mind, in my own little mind, I was like, that was probably me being negative against my own people.
Mhm.
But back to with this piece with the assessments,
Mhm.
they've always been. I remember being in the first grade taking an assessment. The problem is not the assessment. The problem is how the assessment is being used against
Yes.
the districts.
There you go.
How they are report carding and judging
Mhm.
everyone in a just like to compare China and Japan to America's educational system. That ain't fair.
That's not fair.
To compare the districts in the suburbs where they have two-parent family households with college educations, both one driving a BMW, the other one driving a Cadillac, to a parent in the urban setting that the lights are about to be cut off and we got to pour water down the toilet to make it flush. You can't come. That is not fair. And then and the original reason for the assessments was to allow teachers and parents to know where their child was at.
Teaching and learning was.
And to use it to help improve academics. But they started to give report cards and to shed the light on not the positive, but the D's and, the C's, the D's, and the F's.
Yep.
And then people started to scramble. And then they threw the merit pay in there. Oh, well, we can crack two birds with one stone. We can get some merit pay and we can cheat and get our report card grade improved.
Based on standardized test scores.
So it's really not this assessment. I don't have a problem with the assessment. I have a problem with the authorities and how they use the assessment to pit us as educators wherever we are around against each other. Because we're crabbing. I'm a crabs in the barrel. I'm gonna pull you down so I can get up. I'm gonna pull you down so I can get. And then if a student comes to a district from a certain area, they do whatever they can not to receive that student or to put them immediately in remedial classes. I mean, so the assessment itself is not really the issue. The issue is how the federal government and how the state authorities use the assessments.
So Shannon, what's your thoughts?
So I agree with most of what my brother has shared, but I have a problem with the assessments and with who writes the assessments and with their values and with what they hold as important and who they're writing these assessments for. So yeah, I got a real issue with the ideology that goes behind creating questions and supposed opportunities to measure for my kids and my people something that's so disconnected to who and what they are that it's offensive that to even put it in front of them. So that's just kind of that piece. I have to unfortunately run to another meeting, and I would not ever walk on a conversation like this.
Look, Shannon, is no worries. Thank you so much for joining us. As we close out this evening, our question that we want to leave you guys with, and we're going to open this up to everyone, is what do you think is needed to close the learning gaps between urban, suburban, and rural teaching and learning environments? So before we do that, before we continue with that question, what I would like to do is make sure I post what Trisha wrote, posted. She says, we are testing this week. I had a pep talk with my kids because the Michigan third grade reading law says if their child is not reading on grade level in June, the bylaw can't pass. That's the law. You can't pass this kid to the next grade. This is traumatic. So I had to teach testing. I had to teach test taking strategies, reading strategies, and motivate them to go beyond the expectations that are trying to be placed on them. Out of 10 assessments completed, 6 went up in progress. Plus, I broke out in prayer, So she said, come on now. And that's the thing. So Trish, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to tell you that's been one of the major issues that teachers are having is that they come up with all of these different tests. And I didn't even put in a third grade reading law test because it's unreal. So again, I'm going to go back to this question and I'm going to pose it to you. What do you think we need to do, Alexander, to close the learning gaps between urban and suburban and rural school districts?
Cool. So two things I want to make. You just blanked out.
I know. As soon as I was saying goodnight, my laptop died, but I didn't want to like just leave it at that. I love you guys. Gotta roll. Have a good night. I will see y'all next week.
See you
Cool.
next week.
Yeah.
All right, bro. So there's 2 points I want to make. So No Child Left Behind, along with the 3rd grade reading law. I'm not a fan of either one, but I'm the kind of person that once I'm given a challenge, I start to try to figure out how to manage that challenge. The one good thing that I could bring out about No Child Left Behind is that it did spark a spirit of we gotta do something. Same thing with the 3rd grade reading law. I don't necessarily like it, but what it did shed a light on is by 3rd grade, before 3rd grade, we need to do something.
We got to do something.
And so it's not all negative, but how they use the data
To hold back
against us as educators, as school districts, it is really not fair in a lot of different ways and a lot of different reasons why. And so, you know what has become extremely popular now is social emotional learning. And I think with that, if we put more emphasis on social emotional learning in the right way, in the mindfulness way, I think that we can help improve our students' behaviors, our students' activities, and our students' progress, because they come to us already having experienced some serious traumatic experiences, which really puts them in a state of survival. And when you're in a state of survival, it's very hard for that magic to happen. Matter of fact, they say most brains shut down in that survival state. So the social emotional learning that a lot of districts are trying to work, are starting to bring forthcoming. If we can get that in a good place, in a good space, as the new terminology is, I think that we can make some leeway with getting our students in a better state of mind to receive the knowledge that we're trying to provide to them, and therefore we can elevate them even more in a more expeditious way, along with all the other things we have to do as well.
So guys, I'm going to tell you, like I told you before, this is like a bigger conversation. If you want to learn more about social emotional, why don't you click on episode 2 or 3? We have Paula Lightsey talk about social emotional and some of the resources, skills, and techniques that you can use as an individual, you can use as a parent. And she also walked through some things that you can do in the classroom as teachers. So again, check out episode 2 or 3 with Paula Lightsey. She is a guru and an expert on social emotional learning. She is employed at Southfield School District, and that's what she teaches, social emotional learning within the classroom. I want to say to you, Mr. Alexander, of course, you're welcome to come back. And I say this to everyone, not because the school district's one of my clients, but because I think he's a tremendous school leader and he's really doing a lot over there. And I think we really need to hear from more educators who are making great strides in the middle of everything that's going on, everything you talked about that's impacting your community. You guys still have some pretty high test scores over there. I just want to throw that out. Achievement is happening over there. They've done a lot of out of the box thinking over the past year or two with the pandemic, not only just for students, but for staff. You guys have this great thing going with your cohorts, with your teachers. How is that going?
Wonderful. You talking about our apprentice program where we are. So, there's a shortage in certified teachers. We couldn't find certified teachers. So the thought was, let's grow our own. And so we actually have 10 that are about to complete a process this month of December. And then we will start with a new group in January and February. We received a grant from Workforce Development that helps us provide that access to alternative certification programs. It's coming along well.
I love it.
We had a slow start. But we had to hold some hands and have some meetings and set up some programs so that we can be more successful. And again, whatever we need to do is we just don't want to let it sit dormant. I'm an active person. I'm an action person. So I'll sit and listen and see what they have to say. I truly don't believe that I'm the smartest person. I just happen to be the person with the energy.
You're the most passionate person. It's about passion for education. That's what's important. Because I tell you, that's really huge. And that's one of the things I admire about what it is that you guys do. I admire that about you. The alternative education program, everyone that he's referencing, I've worked with 8 of them across multiple school districts. I come in and I teach instructional technology and showing teachers how they can be more innovative using different technology resources and tools. Because I am and still hold my administrative certification and also multiple certifications in teaching in the classroom, but also in technology. Trisha, I mean, I'm not going to even post this, but because Trisha's a trip, this is what Trisha said. Trisha, don't do that. You know, your teacher are they hiring? Where is the school? I'm in my car. I can't take Trisha. Okay, Trisha,
hey,
Service Learning School District.
She can reach out to me.
Service Learning School District. Again, Trisha, I'll hook you up with them. But starting the month of January, you guys will see a lot of commercials running on all of my podcasts from Service Learning because they are one of my clients. And my thing is I always try to promote what teachers and what educators are doing that's amazing. And they're one of the, excuse my mouth, kick-ass school districts. I'm gonna be honest with you. What you guys do in urban education is just mind-shifting to me. And you guys do a great job. So Alexander, you're always welcome to come back. We're going to continue this conversation on educational equity. Please come back anytime. We would love to have you. Again, this is a great platform. And I'm going to say to you guys in closing, be sure to tune in next week where we continue this conversation. Who knows? You guys love Alexander. You might see him again. Plus, we're going to have other educators on so we can continue the conversation around merit pay. Alexander, closing out, what do you want to share with everybody?
Hey, education is hard. We were not created to do anything alone. Together, we are powerful. Love the babies. And guess what? The child that you see before you today is not the adult that they will be in the future. Mm-hmm. But they will remember how you treated them. So I advise you to love them with all you have. And guess what? They will probably love you back even more.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I love that. See, I'm getting emotional. I hate to get emotional on my own show, right? Because I got to stay all professional and polished. Alexander, again, you guys are welcome back anytime. I would love to have any of your administrators or teachers. I would love to share the great things you guys are doing over there. Anytime you guys want to do a demo of all, because I talk about you guys all the time. Everybody's probably like, we're sick of that Service Learning. But I mean, I talk about all the other schools, but I talk about you guys a lot because you're one of the top urban school districts who are turning out high performers. And that's what matters right now. So thank you so much for joining us here. And again, if you guys want to get in contact with Alexander, you know what to do. Check me out in DM. And I'm going to help you guys connect the dots. Why? Because they're